The fact that JavaScript has first-class functions means that functions are variables. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good.
So
Okay.
just the definition of first class.
Yeah, I don't think that's like the best definition of it ever, but yes. It's the purposes of today. Yeah, Joe. Functions are, all functions are functions. Only functions that are a property of another object, like this one, get element by ID, is a method of the document. And add event listener here is a method of taco button. I would not call this a method. With that said, I don't have a computer science degree, so who knows? Terminology is hard. Not yet. You could like assign it to a property and then it would be a method, but Ian.
So in JavaScript, what is the purpose of return? You can see it in the console.
What I could do is I could do copy and paste would make this much easier, wouldn't it? Cool. Now I got an array of potatoes. I can use that return value in another part of my code. This is a silly contrived example, but return values are the way that that function communicates with the thing that calls it. Yeah?
But return would not show anywhere in the, even in the index or in the HTML.
Not unless you tell it to. Yeah, you got a console log if you want to see that for debugging purposes. Okay, let's get back to event listeners. So, when we pass taco button click handler, we did not do it with parentheses. What would happen if we did? Would this still work? What will happen? Yeah.
Instead of passing on the function, you just pass on the value.
Oh, so good. Yeah. Taco button click handler, when we put parentheses around it, becomes its return value. JavaScript looks first to taco button click handler, runs that function, gets the return value from that function, passes the return value into add event listener after the click, and then runs the rest of it. Cool? Just like in Ruby, if we pass the invocation of a function into another function, it will invoke the sort of like inner one first, get the return value, pass that in instead, and then go on. That's not what we want to do. For a couple of reasons. One, what is the return value of taco button click handler? Raise your hand, please, if you know. Yeah, go ahead. You might think so, but actually no. It's something different. Tony. Undefined. Why is it undefined? I didn't do like return undefined here. I could, but I didn't.
Because the console log only prints and return is actual value.
Yeah, console log actually doesn't return anything. If I did explicitly return console log here, taco button's not defined. Yikes, that's a whole other problem. Taco button click handler is still going to return undefined. It'll console log for you, which looks kind of like the return value, but this one is the actual return value. Console log itself returns undefined, and unless I explicitly return, every function is going to return undefined. If I uncomment my taco button and fix this error, a weird thing happens. What did I get in my console? Did I click? No, that's not what I want at all. And worse yet, when I click this button, nothing the fuck happens. Exactly what Josh said is true. When JavaScript reads all this code, it'll execute this taco button click handler one time, pass the return value into add event listener. Add event listener is like, and it gets up. This is not how we do a callback. That is not actually a callback because we're not passing that function into the function. We're passing the return value, which is undefined. When we're doing an event listener, we always want to pass a reference to the function so that it can be called later by the browser. Or we can do it with an anonymous function. I know you have questions.
My question is, what if the taco button click handler take in an argument of a number? Then when you call it in there, you have to put in an argument. So an argument is now a function.
Yeah, you've noticed something about this, which is that like if we're passing the function off for someone else to execute, we are giving up control of what gets passed into it. That is true. There is a way to get around it. I don't want to go into it just yet, but the cool thing is that because the browser calls this function, it does pass something in. That'll be really, really handy for us. It's called the event. It's an object, and it's an object that helps us understand what the fuck happened. When I click this button, I've got an object. It's a mouse event, just like MDN said. Put it under that header. And it has all this information about like where I clicked. It has some information about what I clicked. It has some information about when I clicked. And that's about it as far as what we need to know. It has this cool path variable that shows me like, okay, the taco button is actually in a nav element, which is in a body. Yeah, here we go. Button, nav, 0 pixels high for some reason. Body, HTML, document. You can walk it all the way up, which is kind of cool, but not very useful for us right now. The thing that the browser passes into our callback, in this case, is an object that describes what event happened. If I click again, the time is going to be different. Timestamp is now like 58,000 when it was in the thousands before. The coordinates are slightly different, 500 by 69 instead of 509 by 77. Every event comes with a bunch of metadata about what happened in that event argument. If you don't accept a parameter in your function, it'll still run, because JavaScript just doesn't care how many arguments you pass to a function. It doesn't. I can put 5 on here and it'll still go. We've got our mouse event, but then we've got undefined, undefined, undefined. Gone are the days when you get a nice error message when you pass the wrong number of things into a function. With that said, you get more flexibility. You just have to be more responsible to your own self. What else? Yeah.
Can I just go back and like restate what I think that I just learned?
Please. That's great.
So when we're using the event, listener, add event listener, the second argument is the callback, and we don't want to run. We don't want to call the function inside of as an argument.
Correct.
So it'll just get returned right.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we just pass it the variable, which is like basically it's just like the text of it,
Mm-hmm.
and then event listener uses that text and calls it.
Yes. We want to refer to the function rather than executing it. If we execute it, we get the return value. If we refer to it, it gets to be executed later. Sort of the difference between me saying Mazen and me saying, Mazen, can you get my charger? But don't actually, because I'm good. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Analogies? Yeah.
I do not understand what you say like, what if you want to give it a problem?
Mm-hmm.
You're now saying like, you don't have to, or we can.
We don't have to for this function because it doesn't. We don't need any additional information to do what we want to do here. If in the future we need to give it a parameter, I promise there's a way. I can show you. Don't get stressed out by this if you're already like in a place where this is a lot to handle. We're going to wrap it in an anonymous function. This anonymous function gets the event as the argument, and then we get to pass in like whatever we want. That's one way. Yeah, wait, yeah, that's right. So we passed it in here, grabbed it here. This is what's called a closure. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a closure. It's just a little anonymous function that wraps the execution of this so we can pass in what we want. This function no longer has access to event, but it'll work.
So in the anonymous function, this is one way of doing it,
Mhm.
but is the argument for function always event?
You can call this whatever you want. It's your argument. It'll always be a mouse event.
The argument is tackle button click handler.
Say that again?
The argument, whatever you wrote, is the tackle button click handler, whatever.
It gets passed in by the browser. So it's still going to be that mouse event thing that we just saw, always, no matter what we call it here. Because it's our function, we get to name our own argument. The value is determined by what gets passed in. Yeah?
I think I just use the empty one, the arrow to.
Yeah, that's also fine. And you can also use an arrow function for this too if you want. Carla.
Yeah, I'm lost.
Fair.
So you don't need to pass anything in tackle button click handler when you define the function?
Correct. If you don't need to, your callback that you're going to pass into add event listener does not need to accept any arguments.
I think I'm not understanding why not. Because when you showed us without it, it wasn't working. And you showed us with it, and it did. So I don't understand why. I'm confused.
Fair
I'm
enough.
Really confused. Sorry.
Let's go back to the simpler example because I don't need to go down that argument. Does this part make sense or no?
Well, that was where I was confused because that didn't work.
It should.
Were you showing us that not working?
Oh no! Well, what didn't work was this.
Oh.
Runs once. Oh, hello's not. Okay, fine.
You need the return undefined.
No. Many things. Sorry. All right. So I'm going to console log it clicked in this taco button event click handler. I want that to run only when I click the button. What happens is it runs once at the beginning. When I click the button, nothing doing. The difference is here I'm calling my own callback, so it isn't actually a callback. Without the parentheses, I'm passing it off to be called. And in that case, no console log on page reload, console logs every time I click the button. That's the important distinction. The passing stuff in, either way it'll work. But functions in JavaScript don't need all of their arguments to be fulfilled. Ooh, 3 hands at once? All right, I'm going to start up front, and then we'll go back to Danielle.
So okay, you don't need the return undefined, but are we done with this function, or
Yeah.
like, what should happen?
We should do some DOM manipulation in it to actually like add tacos to the thing. Yeah,
Okay.
not done. I'm just pausing to like get through callback craziness because this is some of the weirdest shit that you're gonna see. This and asynchronicity are the hardest things we're gonna do this month, probably. That's debugging.
Well, what does the return look like, or like what would an event return besides like round, or I don't know.
What? So like
or,
what?
whatever.
What should taco button click handler return?
It's like HTML.
It's not actually going to return that, but it is going to do some stuff to our HTML, ultimately. Currently, doesn't return anything.
Right.
It console logs, but it returns undefined, like any function will, unless you give it an explicit return value. What we want it to return doesn't really matter. The browser's not going to look at the return value, so we can return whatever we want, including nothing, and probably for the sake of your time, just don't return anything. But what I can do in this function is I can say, like, I don't know, this is a silly example, but I can click the taco button and make it go away. Or, I don't know, I don't know, that may or may not work.
Put in
Size. Gross. Maybe. Is it a string? All right, I'm going to try this one thing, and then we're going to give up. Yeah, there's always a way. No. All right, fine. it might do that for you. I don't know. I'm not going to debug that right now. There were more questions. Joe, I think you were up next.
Yeah, so if you return a function, you make return a cell, I guess, is that a thing?
So, like, I mean, if you really wanted to do, no, that, I don't know if that'll work or not. No. Well, wait, hold on. I'm not console logging anything. Insanity. I hate it, but it works. Don't do this. But yes, you can. Oh, and I need to fix that too. Avi, you were next. So if the function calls itself, that is recursion. And without a base case, ooh, it will. I think when it overflows the stack, it will, but before it does that, it seems to be making a browser very slow. If you ever put yourself in this position, and if you do, let me know, because that's pretty cool. What you gotta do is go into your Chrome and figure out where your Introduction to Events tab is. There we go. Stack size, uncaught range error. Maximum call stack size exceeded at 66,700 calls to that function. I'm not even going to kill this tab. I think it's fine. Oh, crap, I did it again. All right. Yeah, so when we did this, when we returned the definition of taco button click handler, this became a higher order function of a different kind. It's a function that now returns a function that happens to be itself, which JavaScript lets you do it. Just pass a function in, don't call it, let the event handler call it for you. That's the best way. And we're gonna do our DOM manipulation, but first, Avi and Chloe, and then we gotta do this because we only got 10 minutes left. You can use recursion for a lot of stuff. Pretty much anything you can use iteration for, you can also use recursion. But I'm gonna table that. We can talk about it though, I love recursion. Chloe.
This function has a name.
Correct.
What happens when the function doesn't have a name?
Pretty much the same thing. I can do this exact same function as an anonymous function. So anonymous just means no name, as I said. And the way you do that is you write the word function, put your parameter list right there with no name before them, curly braces for the function body, and we're done. This is sort of like a throwaway function. It's more like a block. It's sort of like, this is what you should do. I never want to refer to this function again. Don't even need to. And I can do all of the DOM manipulation I want to in this anonymous function. Does that answer your question?
You know this, you have an invocation there.
It looks exactly like an invocation, I know. I promise you, though, it's not. If it was, I would have a really bad time. I don't think it matters. This isn't the invocation, it's the parameter list. So if I do it here, I've got that parameter list with event. That's the things that can be passed into the function. That function has a slot to receive something when it gets called. It looks like an invocation because it's still using parentheses, but it's actually a space for the browser to pass in an event if I want it to be. Or if I don't care about the event, I don't list it. Does that help?
Okay, is there a space there or no?
I don't think it matters. Unexpected end of input. Uh-oh. Oh, sure. Yeah, no, it's the trailing thing there, I think. Browsers don't actually care about semicolons that much, and neither do I, but maybe I should. Yeah, so you can have a space there, is what I just found out. It's totally fine. If I wanted to invoke this function, I could wrap it in parentheses and put 2 more parentheses on the end, but no, not now. Okay, let's do our DOM manipulation. When we click this taco button, what do we want to have happen to our lovely, lovely DOM? Raise your hand if you have a suggestion.
We want to create another button for another LN.
We want another blob li thing. Yeah. And how would you like to do that? I'm going to give a couple ways, but they're all probably good for now. I can call on someone else too if you don't mind.
Okay, I know there's probably a faster way to do this, but okay. So first we want to create another one, so it'd be like we call it. So, well, Well,
Oh, you want a variable? Or,
well, since we're doing it in here, probably, that's why, like, I figured there's probably an easier way to do it, but I want to don't do a variable, so, like,
do it your way. I'm not worried about fast.
No, I'm sorry, taco equals, document, element, and then you put, li,
Mhm.
or, is that, right?
Yep, well, that's good.
And then you take taco,
Mhm.
and then you want to do document body dot append, and then you pass in taco.
Love it. One thing,
Oh, constant.
I'm going to const it because otherwise it becomes a global variable. We may have taco variables floating all over our app. This will actually confine that variable inside this function. I will no longer be able to say console log taco down here and get that variable out later. I can't access it in the console. It's trapped inside of this function, which is a good thing. Danielle?
What's the difference between the taco string and this variable in here? How would it, are those different?
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is getting an element by an ID that happens to be taco. That's the idea of that button. This taco is an actual variable that is set to a new li that we've created by the document. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah.
Couldn't you also use let there? If a let had blocks of it.
Yeah, either const or let will have the same scope. In this case, we're not going to reassign this variable, so I'm going to use const. We might mess with it, but that's actually fine. Okay. Created this taco, appended it to the body. Click that taco. What happened? Wait. Raise your hand, please. If you would like to describe what just happened. Carla.
It's just making LIs.
It is, which is what we wanted. What's up? We do need to put something in them. Yeah. These LIs happen to be empty. And this is a cool thing about constants. Even if the constant can't be reassigned, I can still mess with the properties of the thing it points to. I can't change what taco points to, but I can change taco. And I'm gonna. Awesome. There are some tacos. I think we still have one problem, though. Yeah.
We need to append that line to the route.
It's in the wrong place. We appended it to the body, and it works. The body is full of LIs, but we actually wanted it in a slightly different place. This is what being a JavaScript developer is all about. If you don't make what you wanted to, at least you make art. So if we want to make this taco appear not as a child of the body, but of the UL, what are we going to need to do? Yeah.
First, we have to send that weird. You want to append?
Yeah. If we want to append that li to something, we're going to have to select this UL off of the DOM. How should we do that? Go ahead. Yeah, let's use its ID, which happens to be blobs. So, just to be simple, let's do document.get element by ID blobs dot append taco, and we're in business with not a moment to spare. Questions?
So you don't have to create like a variable to say the element by ID and then on there. Just line it up.
No. What I might do if I wanted to make this code slightly more efficient, because every time I click this button, it's going to fetch it off the DOM one more time, which gets kind of I might just say const list of things up here, fetch it once, and then call it there. What happens up here, 16, 17, happens one time, at most. This function can run anywhere between 0 and infinity times. So we want this one to be really, really efficient. We only want to do the stuff in here that we have to do all of those times. This can happen once, and we can reference it because scope leaks down. Functions can always see their parent scope's variables. Parents can't see their children's scopes. variables. This taco variable is trapped in this function. These ones still available down here. And that's a closure. But topic for another day. There were other hands and I forgot. Rachel.
Right now we're using an anonymous function.
Mhm.
If we went back to using toggle button with handler,
Oh,
would those lines of code be in the click handler?
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally fine.
Can you leave that out?
Yes.
Yeah. You want it both ways? Yeah, this I think is actually a slightly less messy way to do it. As you put event handlers in event handlers, oh yes, you will get something that, if you've indented your code properly, can be called the pyramid of death. It's very hard to debug. It's very hard to figure out which piece of code is running at which time. Pyramid of death is an anti-pattern. Don't do it. We'll talk more about that later.
So what's the right way?
I mean, depends is the only possible answer for that. I don't think this is bad. This is like 1 level deep, but if you're more than 2 levels deep, I think that's the time to maybe come back and refactor a little bit. I kind of like the named function pattern, but try both. See what works for you. Joe, I think you had your hand up, and maybe the other Joe does too.
Can you delete the constants? Or
Which one?
use their constant, you made it, right?
Oh, can you like delete that variable? I don't know. Let's try. Apparently not. Cool. Anything else? Also, okay, so I'm going to cut this off and say, if you are desperate to go to lunch, you don't care about event handlers anymore, go. If you have more questions, I'm not in any rush. Tess.
Just show us really quickly how you would put it in the beginning. Can you use uncheck?
How I would put, oh, I see. Like how I would append the document, append the taco to the beginning of the list and not the end. There is. No, shit. Oh, yeah, that works. Yeah. Just a different method. I don't know if there is a prepend child, but append and prepend are my go-tos. Joe S., did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about like the argument event that we're passing.
Yes. Can I correct your terminology just a little bit?
Parameter.
It's the passing in part.
Okay.
The event gets passed in, but by the browser. When we say function event here, we define a parameter. We allow something to be passed in. The reason I want to correct that is that if we're ever passing anything into our callback, we're also executing it, which is really bad news for our callback because it's not a callback anymore.
Right.
Cool?
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, I just want to be clear when we're defining this function between like 19 and 23. We have something called event, which is at this point arbitrary.
Yep.
And when we use our call add event listener on taco button, we create an anonymous function that we pass event. Event refers to the previous argument, which is click.
Previous argument, which is click. Not quite.
Okay.
Let's go with this example. I'm doing kind of a weird thing where I'm trying to show you like this is the anonymous function way. Let's ignore that for now. Joe S is our event object. And it's going to be an object with a type of mouse event. It's going to have all these properties, all these things that we can read about the event that happened. The browser passes that in for us. And it is, like, there is a correlation between this string and the type of event we'll get, because if we capture a mouse click, we'll get a mouse click type event. If we do a mouse over, we'll get a mouse event still, but this is a mouse over event. So when I put my mouse over it, we get a new taco. Actually, I want to prepend this too. Like now I don't even have to click on the thing. It's just tacos on tacos on tacos. And this mouse event is going to have somewhere, I think, a type. Yeah, this is a mouse over event. Does that help or make things worse?
I don't know, like, I guess, like, to shorten the question is, we talked about it, we mentioned event appears twice. And I don't know what it's doing the second time.
Where's the second time?
In the add event listener.
Down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this and this, it's doing the same thing, just in a slightly different way. Both of these are callback functions. Both of them take one argument. That one's called JOS. This one's called event. But if we use those functions in the same way, the same thing will come in, which is a mouse event that the browser will pass in. So if I want to do this the other way, well, that should work. Oh, it's a click, that's why. Same deal.
I mean, I don't know. Let me think over a better way to.
Totally. And we can follow up about it too.
Yeah.
I'm available.
Later on.
Would it still work if you didn't provide the argument?
Would it work? Yeah, totally. I mean, JOS is no longer defined. We can't console log that unless it's passed in. But the rest of it, where it adds tacos, totally fine. Woo! Yeah, 10.
So for the mouse event, is that actually give us a true or give us an, like, you console log and JOS, like what that mouse over is? Is that true or what kind of value
It's an object.
is that object?
Mhm.
So what can we, like, can we compare that like to something else, or like what can we do on that?
Good. So let's go back to eelslap. I suspect what they're doing here is, as you move the mouse, they're looking at this event object and looking specifically, oh God. Give me a minute. No, that's my performance assessments. Okay. No, that's still my performance assessments. Okay. As we go from left to right, from right to left, every time that event, that mouse move event fires, we have a slightly different screen X, screen Y, or maybe page X, page Y, or offset X, offset Y, which gives us a sense of like how the mouse is moving. So this event is going boom, 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 boom. Every time it's one number over, or like 5 numbers over, or something like that. So we can do some math with that data to figure out how slapped the guy should be, right? A 5 correlates with like right here, and then a 10 is over here, and then further. Does that get to your question somewhat?
So we want to check those variables inside there. Inside like
Yeah.
Call them.
Yeah, there are properties and values inside this event object that we can inspect and use however we want. So let's do page X and console log that. As we mouse over it, that value is going to be different. And I just do that like an object, grabbing the property. Cool? Awesome. Chloe.
Just you mentioned the cost. So you cannot change the relationship between, like you can change the attributes of the tuple, but you cannot change tuple equals to document. You cannot change its assignment, but you can change the attributes of tuple.
Correct. Line 34, A-OK. Sorry, line 33, A-OK. Line 34, we're going to have a problem. And we're going to have a problem that looks like this. Uncaught type error, assignment to constant variable. Index.js line 34, it ran line 33. We're messing with the property inner text here, setting that to a taco, no problem. Line 34, reassigning the taco variable to an object with a name of Chloe, no dice. And it's not mad about your name being Chloe either.
Okay,
Can't do me either.
You can call tuple dot something and change
Sure.
that inherit.
Yeah,
The
taco.
attribute it has already, you can change, but you can't assign all new attributes.
Yeah, or even when it doesn't.
You cannot change the object of tuple, you can
Right.
change the key value pair within.
Can't change taco to point to a different object, but you can change the thing that it points to.
And if you have comment, oh, what's the difference between inner text content and inner HTML? Let's ease on that.
I don't know. MDN probably does though. I never use text content, but maybe I should. All right, go do great things.
Great, thanks.